These demons have been consistently the biggest threat of living in this land. Far worse than the fact that they prevent you from escaping is these monsters ruthlessly torture anybody they end up getting their hands on. We've seen this same scene happening time and time again, that these monsters are beyond heartless, even though he begged them over and over and over to torture him instead of her. They just would not listen. They actively chose to go for her because they knew how kind-hearted she was. Even in this godforsaken Fromland, she's someone everybody loved, and that's why they chose to go for her. Make no mistake, this wasn't an accident, it was planned. What happened here was something we were already warned about long before it ever happened. The way she screamed as these demonic monsters teared into her body and ruthlessly ripped her apart was something we all knew was coming, and we know exactly why. They kill us for the fun of it. They torture us for hours with a smile on their face. We've seen them doing this same exact thing time and time again, and it really pisses me off. These demons told him, they literally told him, that they're doing all of this because they wanted to hurt him. They're torturing her specifically because they want to break him. That's why they brutalized her the way that they did. They want to make sure that he never forgets every single scream she was making as they completely tore her to pieces. These things are completely disgusting, and the level of escalation that's happening to us is terrifying, and we've been getting a lot of hints that things are going to get even worse, that the lives these people have been living is going to become even more hellish than it already was. Them intentionally targeting the cows and the goats was the first real attack that they've made, and we've known this was coming, and we know this is going to come again. From way back when the voice on the radio warned them about digging the hole or the storm that was closing in just as they were getting to the lighthouse, the signs have been there from the very beginning that action will be taken against us, and that action is clearly being taken right now. This is something that we have known would come for a very, very long time. This land doesn't like it when we question the wrong things. It doesn't like when the people start looking for answers. It actively tries to prevent us from finding out more about everything. It despises that the people keep looking for answers, so it keeps putting up barriers to stop us. And this snow is no different than anything else we've seen before. It's the same story. When Boyd and Sarah found the bottle tree, is it really a mystery that they were magically moved into this massive spider net that enveloped dozens of trees in the surrounding area, with the banging underneath the RV when they were surrounded by the monsters? There's been this idea of being swallowed by the forest, the moving trees surrounding the town. There's definitely a lot that makes it seem like Fromland itself is working against us, the people. The way the cowboy described it to Boyd, you said this place couldn't break you. Those same exact words to describe Fromland was said by the boy in white. This place. There's many hints that Fromland itself is alive, but is it neutral or hostile? The cowboy's statements obviously imply that this place has been evil all along. This would mean that the soil being poisoned and unable to grow crops, the storm that magically came out of nowhere, and of course winter finally arriving are all punishments for Boyd's and the Matthews' repeated attempts to find answers and a way to leave Fromland. And now that Tabitha has finally made it out, Fromland is desperate to take action and wipe out the people before Tabitha is able to come back and inform them of the way out of this cursed Fromland. It would definitely make the boy's words when he pushed her out of the lighthouse make way more sense. The priest mentioning Tabitha and Jim's baby in a conversation about God might be the writers implying the baby's fall was somehow caused by a From entity in order to summon the Matthews family to the town. If a certain mindset is needed to enter this town, then this might also mean the dad who Katri ended up killing might have also been manipulated into paralyzing his own son so that Katri would revenge and therefore have the right mindset needed to enter Fromland. And it's also interesting when you think about this, because Katri thought whatever was talking to him was the voice of God. Whatever it voice that was speaking when Boyd was in the dungeon was not his wife. This is obvious from the fact that it tried to stop him from destroying the music box, but it's good that we're given confirmation in this episode. Katri's refusal to identify himself once again speaks to this idea of the game having rules. Revealing his identity would likely be considered cheating, so he can't do that without breaking the rules. We've already seen this entity trying to stop him from getting answers before, and that makes it obvious that whatever his allegiance is, it's not with the humans. He only uses this form because he knows Boyd is weak to it, just like whatever it was that was using Abby's form. These From entities enjoy messing with the humans and trying to manipulate us into their desired outcomes. The kimono demon pursuing Elgin, despite the music box being destroyed, now makes it clear that it's its own separate being from the music box. And Kenny, this is a man who's already got one foot out the door. They tortured his father who had dementia in a damn dirty basement the entire night. They might be trying to manipulate him and use him to wipe the slate clean with a new massacre. They may have done the same thing with Christopher in the past. Kenny wasn't even in the town when all of this was going on. He doesn't have a clue how they butchered his mother like a pig with zero hesitation. These monsters, these things, they disgust me. It doesn't matter if you're a sick old man or an 80-year-old girl, these demons have no mercy. They will tear you apart limb by limb, skin to skin for hours and hours and hours until you're nothing more than a broken shell. Time and time again, they have slaughtered our people with no remorse. And I genuinely am disgusted even more by how the people of this town have been accepting it. I hate to say this, but Boyd's leadership is weak. How many times does this have to happen before he realizes that this is a war? How many hundreds or thousands of bodies does he have to bury to realize that fighting back and killing these monsters should be their number one priority? For the first time in this entire series, I've started to genuinely feel like Kenny is my favorite character. I used to tear into this guy for his general patheticness in season 2, but when he said it's time they went on the offensive, he immediately became one of my favorite characters in the entire show. The people in this town are far too complacent. It's like they don't understand the environment that they're living in. It's like they don't realize this is a war that they're fighting. How could anybody in this entire town think eating eggs and pancakes on a daily basis was a good idea when you have a completely unreliable food supply? They don't even know where the animals come from. They just randomly find them in the woods. They know they live in a land where seasons have never changed, yet they eat like pigs when they don't know when or if the seasons can change to begin with. These people are very naive, and to be honest, I blame Boyd and Donna's lack of foresight. All the people that was left since the storm wiped out the crops should have been heavily guarded 24/7. Ideally, Boyd should have been keeping the food locked up in his office while stationing people to watch them on rotation, and they're not just supposed to stand there like idiots. You put a gun in their hand so that anybody who tries to steal the food gets a very clear message. If you try to take the food, well, just try taking the food, see what happens. As someone who fought in Iraq, Boyd should have an understanding of how people can quickly start devolving into animals in a war zone, which Fromland obviously is. He's running this town like a clown show to the point where these people don't even realize they're soldiers. I've said this before, but they should only be eating at most every few days, with foods that expire quickly being eaten the quickest. Eating to a full stomach should only be done on extremely specific occasions because the food supply is extremely unreliable. You need to be very rigid with when, where, and how everyone eats and preserve as much of it as you possibly can. The only person who should be getting more consistent meals would be Ethan because 1, he's a growing boy. 2, he actually has initiative, which we know because he tried to save his mother, unlike 90% of the fools in this town who just sit around eating and wasting food instead of exploring or doing something productive of some kind. The people of this town know that Boyd's leadership is weak. Because here's the truth, you don't need 60 people farming on such a small plot of land. You don't need that. You can easily sacrifice 20, 30 people to go exploring the land. The people of this town know that Boyd's leadership is weak. That's why they knew they could just steal the food from Tian Chen without any kind of repercussions. They knew he's not going to do anything about it. That's a very bad sign. This town is collapsing because they know Boyd doesn't have the strength to be a general, and that's very hard for me to say because I genuinely respect this guy. Like, remember what he did to Smiley? This guy is, he's fearless. Oh, okay, he's not fearless, but he's incredibly brave, far more than 99% of the population. But that's not enough to be a general. You also need to be smart. And the fact that they clearly have no respect for him is a very bad thing when you're fighting against these enemies who won't hesitate to absolutely destroy you. Randall would have a very easy time taking Boyd's position through simple logical arguments. I said this same exact thing when Boyd decided to burn Smiley's body instead of showing it to the townspeople. All Randall needed to say back then was, 1, if they really killed the monster, why would they hide it instead of parading it around the town like a trophy? And 2, if they can kill monsters, why would they hide the method from the rest of us? Just by those 2 statements alone, Boyd's leadership would have crumbled to nothingness. And the fact that people were getting killed in their dreams would have just made it easier to blame Boyd for everything that was happening, which would actually have been valid because he was, in fact, the person who caused all that. The people also didn't know about Worms or the dungeon or Martin. And obviously that's because Boyd did not tell them. And once again, they also don't even know there's anything apart from the monsters in general. So Boyd would have had a very, very difficult time arguing against these points once Randall sows the seeds of doubt into the minds of the population. Even now, Boyd is making major mistakes. He takes the talisman without even informing Jade why or what he is doing. He gives no direction and endangered Jade to put him in what was obviously a trap. He acted totally irrationally, and while I'd hope it's meant to be a character flaw, I seriously doubt that's what the writers are going to do. They didn't do it in the second season. I don't see them doing it here. Randall can easily take Boyd's position, especially if he uses force. That's why Boyd's bluff about fighting him when he was stealing the goat was that was hilarious. The only people who could physically match Randall in this community are Kenny, Ellis, and Jim in order. And honestly, Jim is getting too old for that stuff. And unfortunately, none of these 3 guys would be able to take Randall in a 1v1 period. And Boyd's Parkinson's is still active because we saw him shaking in this episode, so Randall could easily just take everything by force if he decided he wanted to do it, especially if Randall would be willing to kill in that situation. And we've already seen he's very impulsive when he tied Donna up to a tree with no evidence of anything. He might even kill this person is fighting in a 1v1 by accident because of acting by impulse. Then by the time he would be regretting it, it's already too late. I think Randall could be kept in check, but he's the type of guy who needs to be constantly smacked, metaphorically, not necessarily physically, by a very, very mentally strong father figure. Otherwise, he's going to constantly act out. He's very insecure, probably due to his childhood, so he wants to prove himself valuable, which is why he behaves the way that he does. But in general, Boyd's legitimacy is hanging by a thread. This town is worse than ever. He's failed to grow crops, and he got Tian Chen slaughtered like a dog. And Randall, on the other hand, saved like 4 different people. And Randall, genuinely one of the biggest pieces of shit in this community. He literally beats people for the smallest reasons, and clearly very impulsive, but he still takes action to protect people from the monsters. Randall isn't even close to my top-rated characters. In fact, I actively wanted the writers to kill him off in season 2. I wanted Boyd, Donna, anybody to just take him out. I had more than enough of this guy, but logically, he still moves the story forward, so I appreciate that whenever he's on screen. The big thing that got me really excited in this episode, though, was Kenny. We saw him actively wanting to take action on these demons, and now that his mom was tortured like an animal, and his dad as well, he's finally going to have the mindset I've been looking for any of these people, which is killing the demons at all costs. And I'm genuinely excited for Kenny this season. If Kenny genuinely gives everything he has to find answers or to kill the monsters, unlike sitting around like the rest of these sheep, he might genuinely make it to number 1 on my favorite character list, which would be an absolutely massive boost to where he is right now, because he is very low right now, trust me on that. Kenny doesn't have any of the assholery that Randall has. So if he gets that Rick Grimes season 3 to season 5 mindset of just being an absolute savage, Kenny going to the dark side has the potential to be incredibly amazing, especially for me. The CGI of the cow getting shredded was absolutely gnarly. I was genuinely shocked to see that because I just didn't expect it. But hey, they should do more. They should do more of that. Tian Chen's death was honestly pretty rough, and the hair pull was insane, man, but I just can't get over how her death was all completely avoidable. They had so much time to run away from the monsters after they saw them, but they were still pulling the animals like idiots. I would have immediately bolted the second I saw a monster, but to be fair, I would have never gone outside to begin with, so my priority is only keeping the townspeople alive and getting out. Considering Boyd already knew that there's clearly supernatural enemies working against them, it would have been very, very easy for him to at least consider that what was going on was some kind of trap. Boyd should have definitely considered that as a possibility before storming outside without even taking 30 seconds to analyze the situation. That talisman, like, look at that thing. One shove on the door, that thing would have dropped like a feather. The writers shoving away Boyd's shotgun wounds was something I was very scared would happen, and it did. He's healing the wound like he's Wolverine. It didn't even faze him. There used to be a theory in season 2 that Sarah's possibly abusive ex-boyfriend or maybe husband who we've never seen could have been Randall. So it's funny seeing Sarah going into Randall's bus with the other people. If that theory is true, I'll end up losing my mind. The old man from the trailer definitely seems to be Victor's dad at this point. I mean, technically he didn't confirm it when Tabitha asked him, but there's a 99% chance that he is. He clearly recognized the lunchbox and seems people keep bothering him about his family's disappearance. A commenter also told me that the actor is in his 70s, but damn, this guy looks about the same age as Victor, who's only in his 50s. His hair is the only giveaway about his age. He looks way younger than his age. Tabitha calling her mom shows the timeline has probably been moving consistently, which is the same as what we saw with Marielle. This is more evidence of Fromland existing parallel or somehow in the normal world, but presumably undetectable by world governments. These cabins found by Jim and Kenny are incredibly exciting. I'm very happy that they're exploring and that Fromland is way bigger than I previously thought. I'm here in this show for the mystery and the answers, so I love seeing stuff like that. It's always my favorite part of the story. There was some major stuff and incredible possible reveals happening in this episode. It has the usual problem of the characters being dumb as hell, but they did a great job of building the mystery while expanding on others and hinting at very, very appealing plot lines for certain characters like Tabitha finding out more about Fromland, or Eloise, who is Victor's sister, and Kenny becoming more prominent one way or the other. But when it comes to Sarah, for example, I expect a lot more than what we saw in this episode. But watch this video where I talk about how the entity's been manipulating her for so long and the huge impact of that on the story, because I definitely think it's a good one.